Right now, the GPS satellites orbiting Earth carry atomic clocks that run faster than yours by about 38 microseconds every single day. But that tiny gap is real, and it matters enormously. And here is what nobody tells you about that fact. It is not a quirk of the instruments. It is not a calibration error. Time itself, the actual fabric of duration, moves at a different rate depending on where you are and how fast you are moving. The clock was never keeping perfect time. It was always lying. Every single second you have ever experienced was filtered through a nervous system that warps, stretches, and compresses duration based on boredom, fear, joy, and age, which raises a question. How many seconds have you actually lived? Let us start with what is measurable. In 1971, two physicists named Joseph Haffel and Richard Keating strapped atomic clocks onto commercial airline flights, flew them around the world, and then compared them to identical clocks that stayed on the ground. Clocks flying eastward in the direction of Earth's rotation ran slower than the ground clocks. Clocks flying westward ran faster. Both results matched Einstein's predictions to within experimental error. Definitively, measurably, provably confirmed. This is called time dilation. It flows directly from Albert Einstein's special and general theories of relativity. Move faster through space or get closer to a massive gravitational source like a planet, and time moves slower for you relative to someone who is stationary and far away. The GPS satellites orbiting Earth right now account for this effect in their code. Their clocks run about 38 microseconds fast per day relative to ground clocks. And without correcting for that, your navigation app would drift by about 11 kilometers every single day. 11 kilometers. So time dilation is not philosophy. It is engineering. It is the reason your phone can tell you to turn left in 300 meters with any accuracy at all. But here is the twist that most people miss. Einstein did not say clocks run at different rates. He said time itself runs at different rates. The clocks are just honest witnesses, which means the word now, that word you use dozens of times per day, does not describe a single shared moment across the universe. Two observers in different gravitational fields or moving at different speeds do not share the same now. Their present moments are offset. And if the physicist's version of time is already this strange, consider what happens when you add a human brain into the equation. Think about the last summer you remember as a child. It felt enormous, didn't it? Endless. An entire civilization of afternoons. Now think about last year. Where did it go? This is not nostalgia. It is not sentimentality. It is a documented, measurable perceptual effect with a name. The proportional theory of time perception. The idea was first articulated seriously by the psychologist Paul Janet in the 19th century, and it goes like this. We perceive the length of a time period relative to how much of our total life it represents. When you are 6 years old, 1 year is 1/6 of your entire existence. It is proportionally massive. When you are 40, 1 year is 1/40th. It is a sliver. But there is a second mechanism, memory density. When you are a child, almost everything is new. New school, new friend, new food, new embarrassment. Your brain encodes these novel experiences in rich detail because novelty triggers a neurochemical response, dopamine, that signals, remember this, it matters. Dense memories feel long in retrospect. Sparse memories feel short. When your daily life becomes routine, same commute, same lunch, same inbox, your brain stops flagging those experiences as novel. It stops recording them in detail. And when you look back, there is almost nothing there. The year becomes a blur, not because you were unconscious, but because you were unstimulated. The quantity of experienced time is, in some real sense, under our control, or at least influenced by our choices. Time does not only stretch in childhood, It stretches in extreme situations. Ask anyone who has been in a car accident. They will often describe the seconds before impact as feeling like minutes. Slow motion, hyper-clear detail. This effect is so common, it has a name, tachypsychia, from the Greek for swift mind. For years, the popular explanation was that the brain literally processes information faster under threat, like a camera switching to a higher frame rate. But in 2007, neuroscientist David Eagleman ran a controlled experiment. He took volunteers to a 46-meter SCAD diving tower in Dallas, Texas, the kind used for extreme sport jumps, released them backward into free fall, and asked them to read a special wristwatch strapped to their forearm that flickered numbers too fast for normal perception. If their brains were actually running faster, they should have been able to read the numbers. They could not. What actually happens is this: the fear response, mediated by the amygdala, a small almond-shaped structure deep in the brain, triggers a flood of stress hormones. The brain encodes that period in unusually dense detail. In retrospect, that density is interpreted as duration. More memory stored equals more time felt. So slow motion under fear is a trick of memory, not of real-time processing. The clock did not slow down. The recording did. What creates the sensation of time moving impossibly fast? Boredom's opposite: flow. The psychologist Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi spent decades studying what he called flow states, periods of deep engagement with a challenging task where a person loses awareness of time entirely. Musicians, surgeons, programmers, chess players. Hours vanish. They are not bored and not afraid. They are completely absorbed, and their sense of duration collapses, which tells us something important. The human clock is not a timekeeper. It is a relevance meter. Now consider what this means in the context of the world we actually live in. The pace of technological change has become a cliché. Everyone knows things are moving fast. But let us get specific about how fast. It took telephone technology about 75 years to reach 50 million users. Radio, 38 years. Television, 13. The internet, 4. ChatGPT reached 100 million users in 2 months. That is not a trend line. That is a cliff edge. And here is what this does to our experience of time. It generates a condition that psychologists and sociologists have started to call temporal disorientation. Events that happened 3 years ago, the launch of certain AI tools, major geopolitical shifts, widespread pandemic-era changes, feel simultaneously very recent and impossibly distant. We cannot place them on our inner timeline with any accuracy. The acceleration is not just a fact about the world. It is distorting our perception of our own past. There is a concept in cultural criticism called the shrinking present. Sociologist Hartmut Rosa, in his book Social Acceleration, argues that as the pace of change increases, the period of time during which any given set of knowledge, skills, or social norms remains relevant shrinks. In simpler terms, the world changes faster than your map of it can update. Your mental model of reality is always out of date. The gap between what you know and what is currently true keeps growing. Not because you are getting dumber, but because reality is accelerating away from any static understanding. This is genuinely new in human history, not the idea of change. Humans have always experienced change, but the rate of change, and rate changes everything. If a river flows at 1 kilometer per hour, you can wade across it. At 10 kilometers per hour, you need a boat. At 100, nothing survives, the crossing unchanged. So, will time disappear? The question sounds dramatic. It is not rhetorical. Physicist Julian Barber has spent his career arguing that time, as a fundamental feature of reality, does not actually exist, that what we experience as the flow of time is an illusion constructed by the brain from a static configuration of the universe. His model, called Platonia, a configuration space where all possible arrangements of matter exist simultaneously, has not been widely adopted by mainstream physics, but it has not been definitively disproven either. And he is not alone. In quantum mechanics, the Wheeler-DeWitt equation, a foundational equation attempting to describe quantum gravity, has no time variable. No time at all. When physicists attempt to reconcile quantum mechanics with general relativity, the two most successful theories in the history of science, time keeps getting in the way. Or more precisely, it keeps vanishing from the equations. This does not mean your Thursday meeting is an illusion. The practical experience of time, the sense of before and after, the accumulation of memory, the anticipation of the future, is real in every way that matters to a living human. But it might mean that time is not a feature of the universe, the way mass or electric charge is. It might be something the universe does only when you are looking, or more specifically, something that you do, a framework your brain imposes on raw experience to make it navigable. And if that is even partially true, then the question, will time disappear as technology accelerates, becomes more interesting. Because technology does not just change the world, it changes the cognitive environment in which human brains construct their experience of reality. Constant notifications, compressing news cycles, infinite scroll. These are not neutral delivery mechanisms. They are forcing the brain to process time in smaller and smaller slices. Neuroscientist Gloria Mark at the University of California, Irvine, has tracked how long people spend on a task before switching. In 2004, the average was 2.5 minutes. By 2012, 75 seconds. By 2020, 47 seconds. 47 seconds. If attention is what makes a moment feel like a moment, and attention keeps shrinking, what happens to our experience of the present? Here is something counterintuitive. In a world that is accelerating, the people who report the richest sense of lived time, the fullest, are not those who keep up with everything. They are those who deliberately create conditions for novelty, depth, and presence. The memory density mechanism we discussed works in your favor here. Seek genuinely new experiences, not just scrolling through new content. That floods the visual cortex with stimulation, but encodes almost nothing distinctive in memory. New experiences, a new skill, a new place, a conversation that goes somewhere unexpected. Each of those becomes a memory landmark. And memory landmarks are what make a year feel like a year, rather than a week. There is also something to be said about the direction of attention. In 2010, researcher Matthew Killingsworth and psychologist Daniel Gilbert published a study tracking the moment-to-moment happiness and attention of over 15,000 people using a smartphone app. The finding was blunt. A wandering mind is an unhappy mind. People who were mentally present, whatever they were doing, reported significantly higher well-being than those whose attention had drifted to past regrets or future anxieties. But there is a second finding, less cited. People who were mentally present also reported that time felt more real to them, more tangible. So attention to the present does not just improve mood. It seems to generate the felt substance of time itself, which means we have a strange situation. The fastest acceleration in human history is also, for many people, the period of greatest felt scarcity of time, and the response that actually works. Slowing attention down, going deeper rather than faster, is the one most directly opposed to the environment technology has constructed around us. We are being optimized away from the very conditions that make time feel real. Let us return to the original question with everything we now have. Will time disappear? Physically, unlikely. But the honest answer is that we do not fully understand what time is at the most fundamental level. The equations that best describe the smallest scales of reality do not require it. Perceptually, something is already changing. The felt texture of time, the spacious, continuous flow from one moment to the next, is eroding for a growing number of people, not because seconds are literally shortening, because the cognitive conditions that produce a rich experience of duration are being systematically dismantled. Culturally, the shrinking present is real. The window of relevance for any given piece of knowledge is closing faster than at any point in recorded history. This compresses our felt sense of the future. It becomes harder to imagine and plan for a world that will change fundamentally within a decade. We are biological creatures. Our nervous systems evolved over millions of years in an environment where change happened on timescales of generations, slowly enough for culture, language, and intuition to adapt. We are now embedded in a world that changes on timescales of months. Carlo Rovelli, one of the most widely read physicists of the past decade, suggests something that sounds almost poetic, but is grounded in serious theoretical physics. What we experience as time may be nothing more than heat, or more precisely, the direction in which entropy increases. In a system at perfect equilibrium, no heat, no disorder, no change. There is no way to distinguish past from future. There is no before or after. Time, in that sense, is change, and change is driven by difference. If technology homogenizes experience, if every day begins to look like every other day, same apps, same feeds, same reactions, then we are not speeding time up. We are making it indistinguishable. We are approaching something like thermal equilibrium in experience, not the disappearance of the clock, the disappearance of the reason to look at it. The child's summer and the panicked driver's slow-motion crash and the programmer lost in flow. These are not contradictions to be resolved. They are layers of the same reality. Time is simultaneously the most fundamental thing we know. It is there in every equation, every heartbeat, every memory, and the most uncertain. We have never built a complete theory of it. We have never agreed on whether it flows or whether it simply is, with past and future equally real and equally fixed. What we do know is this: the experience of time is not given to you passively. You participate in constructing it. Your attention, your novelty seeking, your willingness to be genuinely present rather than merely occupied. And if the world is accelerating, if technology is genuinely compressing the felt window of the present, then the most radical act available to a person might be something very quiet. To stop, look at something that is actually in front of you. Hold attention there long enough for it to become a memory, not because speed is wrong, but because when every moment looks identical to the last, when the feed never ends and the day vanishes without a single thing you will remember tomorrow, you have not been living faster. You have been living less. The clock lied. It always has. So whose time is it exactly?